Let me say this to my beautiful African queens. There are few things more disappointing and disgusting. Let me say this to my African queens out there. Whether they're in Africa, Europe, Australia, America, Central and South America, Canada, Asia, the Caribbean, the South Pacific, African queens, there's nothing more disgusting and disappointing than for an African woman to be so possessed with negativity and spite. There's nothing more disgusting than the mother of civilization, because that's what you are. Your breasts are there to feed the babies. Your breasts are there to nurture the next generation of African people. Your womb is there to give birth to the next generation. And then after the African woman gives birth to the black child, you have breasts to feed. So you not only birth the child, you feed the child, and you spiritually nurture the child. The black woman births, the black woman feeds, the black woman nurtures. You're the mother of civilization. And as the mother of civilization, there's few things more disappointing than to hear a black woman speak so negatively, so pessimistically, so spitefully about other black people. That is a toxic womb. A lot of our sisters have a toxic womb. You have a victimized vagina. You have what's the word I need? I need the word. Somebody give me the word. You have a vagina so filled with evil, polluted vagina, not physically, spiritually. And the same thing happens with black men. A lot of black men have a wounded phallus. A lot of brothers have a broken penis spiritually. And as a spiritual people, if you, as a healthy black man, go into a spiritually toxic vagina, that spiritually toxic vagina will suck all your power away. Spiritual vampires are brothers and sisters who will suck you dry. And a lot of you know what I'm talking about because you've either been with a spiritual vampire or you yourself is a spiritual vampire. Now, let me say that's, ouch, woo, spiritual vampires are not limited to romantic relationships. Your brother can be a spiritual vampire. Your sister can be a spiritual vampire. Your child can be a spiritual vampire. Your mother can be a spiritual vampire. Your father could be a spiritual vampire. Your aunt, your uncle, your cousin, your coworker, your neighbor, your in-laws. Some of us have belonged to revolutionary organizations. Some of us have belonged to revolutionary organizations that were comprised of spiritual vampires. You ever been a part of an organization that had good aims, good goals, good objectives? You ever been a part of an organization that had good goals, good aims, good objectives, but most of the people or some of the people or the leadership of the organization was vibrating at a low frequency? And every time you went to the meetings, instead of getting encouraged, you left drained. Every time you went to the meetings, instead of leaving positive, you left with a chip on your shoulder, although you came in with a very positive intention, brothers and sisters. That's the spiritual vampires. That's the spiritual vampires. Yes. Yes. It is better to be alone than to spend your life with a spiritual vampire. It is better to be alone than to spend your life with a spiritual companion. Brothers, stay out of toxic vagina. If you are on the spiritual path, stay out of toxic vagina. Sisters, if you are on the spiritual path, stay away from the wounded penis. Stay away from the toxic vagina. Stay away from the wounded penis. I'm telling you, a spiritual vampire is somebody who is thirsty for spiritual liberation, but they don't want to do the work. They want to give their spiritual work to you. And the most important thing that I can say to you spiritually, one of the most important things I can say to you spiritually, my American African brothers and sisters, my continental African brothers and sisters, my Caribbean African brothers and sisters, my Canadian African brothers and sisters, my Australian and Central and South American African brothers and sisters, and my South Pacific African brothers and sisters, I need you to understand nobody can do your soul work for you but you. Nobody can do your soul's work for you but you. I said nobody can do your soul's work for you but you. See, one of the things we have to do, resist all attempts by spiritual vampires to ruin your day. Resist all attempts by spiritual vampires to invade your life. Resist all attempts by spiritual vampires to make their misery your misery. Resist all attempts by spiritual vampires to make their spiritual problems your spiritual problems. Resist all attempts by spiritual vampires to lower your spiritual frequency, brothers and sisters. Resist all attempts by spiritual vampires to make you unhappy. My sage is rolling all over. I'm trying to get saged up. I'm trying to get saged up. I'm getting saged up. Woo! Some of y'all, after you lay down with somebody, you got to sage yourself. You got to sage yourself. Ashe, ashe. Resist all attempts. Anytime somebody comes into your life, anytime somebody comes into your space and tries to upset you, anger you, try to imbalance your energy, they are not a friend. They are not a family. They are not an ally. They are a spiritual vampire who has come to steal your ashe. Don't let nobody steal your ashe. This is why we have to become spiritually and emotionally liberated. You cannot be spiritually liberated unless you are emotionally liberated. You cannot be spiritually liberated until you are emotionally liberated. You cannot be spiritually liberated until you are emotionally liberated. Because emotional power is spiritual power. You're supposed to use your emotional power for love. You're supposed to use your emotional power for compassion. You're supposed to use your emotional power for empathy. You're supposed to use your emotional power for motivation. You're supposed to use your emotional power to make yourself feel better and use your emotional power to make other Africans feel better. You're supposed to use your emotional power to heal the world. Don't let nobody manipulate you into using your emotional power for anger. Don't let nobody manipulate you into using your emotional power for rage. Don't let nobody manipulate you into using your emotional power for disappointment. Don't let nobody manipulate you into using your emotional power for depression or anxiety or suicidal thoughts or homicidal thoughts. All these brothers and sisters we got killing in the black community. All these brothers and sisters we got killing in the black community. All these brothers and sisters we got killing in the black community, they are spiritual vampires. They are wounded souls. And a wounded soul is the most dangerous African in the world. A wounded soul might be more dangerous than a European soul. A wounded African soul might be more dangerous than a European soul, brothers and sisters. When you come across a wounded African, this is what I want you to tell them. When you come across a wounded African, this is what I want you to tell them. When you come across a wounded African, tell them Dr. Umar said that when I come across a wounded African, I'm supposed to send you to the Association of Black Psychologists website. Dr. Umar said, when I come across a wounded African, I'm supposed to send you to the Association of Black Psychologists website. And I want to give y'all the website right now. Everybody take down the Association of Black Psychologists website. And that website is A for association, B for black, P for psychology, S for strong, I for individual.org. That's right. If your wife is a wounded soul, text her right now, abpsi.org. If your husband is a wounded soul, if your baby mama is a wounded soul, if your baby daddy is a wounded soul, if your aunt, your uncle, your cousin, your niece, your nephew, your in-laws, your co-workers, your revolutionary allies, if they are wounded souls, say, I don't have time for you, but there is the Association of Black Psychologists. Go to their website, pull up your state, and all you have to do is Google psychologists in Alabama, black psychologists in Pennsylvania, black psychologists in Texas, black psychologists in Dallas, black psychologists in Milwaukee, black psychologists in London, black psychologists in Wolverhampton, black psychologists in South Africa, black psychologists in Jamaica. Tell them to get their wounded asses away from you until they undergo some therapy. Tell them, get your wounded asses away from me until you go get some therapy. And guess what? Let me tell you how they sneak into our lives. My co-wives are good women. So I thank God I don't have no wounded souls around me at this time. But I have had wounded souls around me before, and I don't want none of you to take on the personal responsibility of healing someone else's illness. I don't want any of you to take on the personal responsibility of healing someone else's spiritual wound, brothers and sisters. Don't you do it. Don't you do it. You cannot heal somebody else's spirit. You can't. You can support them. You can encourage them. You can motivate them. You can talk with them. You can't heal them. We must heal ourselves. We must heal ourselves. It's not being selfish, brothers and sisters. It's not being selfish, brothers and sisters. You have to tell them, I love you. I care about you. But you are a wounded soul. And if I spend too much time around you, you are a wounded soul. And if I spend too much time around you, you will wound my soul. So I need you to get some help. And once you are on the path to spiritual recovery, I would like to re-enter your life. If you need to talk once in a while, we can talk. I'm still here for you as a friend, but I cannot be your crutch. I cannot be your dependency. I refuse to let you manipulate me into a codependent relationship. Too many black women, good sisters, are involved in codependent relationships. Too many black men, good, strong, heterosexual brothers, are involved in codependent relationships with toxic black women. Too many black women are involved in codependent relationships with toxic black men. And I'm trying to motivate you, to motivate those spiritual vampires in your life. I'm trying to motivate you, to motivate the spiritual vampires in your life to go seek some therapy, brothers and sisters. Everybody say a prayer for the FDMG HVAC. I want everybody to pray for Dr. Umar and FDMG. Pray that this school will get renovated before the second annual festival. Please pray. You see the HVAC behind me, brothers and sisters. This HVAC unit behind me has been a stressor for 3 years. We need an HVAC tech to come along and help us do what we need to do. Please pray for the HVAC. I'm dead serious. Let's get this HVAC done. Please pray for a plumber that's going to come and knock out the plumbing and don't charge us an arm and a leg inside the school, brothers and sisters. But I'll get back on task, because you don't want to let negative emotions take over your life. If you allow the spiritual vampire in your space for too long, if you allow the spiritual vampires in your space for too long, they will suck your spiritual energy. Your ashe will be sucked. And this is why, black man and black woman, I know every once in a while a sister wants some icing on her cupcakes. I understand every once in a while a sister wants some icing on her cupcakes. Black man, I know every once in a while you want some cookies with your milk. I understand every once in a while a sister needs to get her cookies warmed up, and she need to get her cupcakes warmed up. And brothers, every once in a while you need some cupcakes and cookies with your milk. But I'm telling you, the quickest way to a spiritual depletion is to lay down with a wounded soul sexually. I said the quickest way to a spiritual depletion is to lay down with a wounded soul. And I'm going to tell you what a spiritual sister once told me. She was an empath. She was one of my empathic readers that I would go to right here in Philadelphia. She was not a traditional African priest or priestess, but she was blessed with the ability to read and to communicate with the ancestors. And she told me, Dr. Umar, rest in peace to that sister. She said, Dr. Umar, you are a brother who was sent here to do a divine mission. She said, I don't care what anybody says about you. You were sent here with a supreme purpose. She said you were sent to this planet with a supreme purpose. And there's going to be women who come into your life who want to do nothing else but suck your energy. They want to drink from your spiritual power, not physically, spiritually. And you know what that sister told me? She said it would be in your best interest. Until you find the right woman, it will be in your best interest to wear a condom when you are intimate with your mate. She said, not for physical diseases. She said, I'm not talking about STDs. She said, I'm not talking about sexually transmitted diseases. She said, I'm talking about spiritually transmitted diseases. Talk to me, black family. How many of you have ever caught a spiritually transmitted disease by laying down with a wounded soul? Talk to me, black man. Talk to me, black woman. How many of you have caught a spiritually transmitted disease by laying down with the wrong energy? We got people walking around with STDs you can't get rid of. I said we got people walking around with STDs you can't get rid of. I said we got people walking around with STDs we can't get rid of. I'm not talking about gonorrhea. I'm not talking about chlamydia. I'm not talking about AIDS. I'm not talking about scabies and crabs and lice. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about spiritually transmitted diseases. I'm talking about spiritually transmitted diseases. They infect you with anger. They infect you with rage. They infect you with desperation. They infect you with depression. They infect you with low self-esteem. They infect you with loneliness. They infect you with their burdens. They infect you with their toxic experiences and their toxic emotions. We keep talking about sexually transmitted diseases. We better start talking about spiritually transmitted diseases. Ladies, make them put a raincoat on. You do not want that man shooting his spiritually toxic energy in your heaven. Black man, put the condom on. I know you want those cookies raw and uncut. I know you want those cupcakes raw and uncut. I know you want them cookies raw. But my brother, that woman will suck the spiritual life out of you. Put a condom on. If that person is spiritually wounded, you better put a condom on and let that plastic serve as a barrier between your soul and their soul, brothers and sisters. Brothers and sisters, you have to meditate every day. You have to meditate every day. You have to meditate every day. You have to get quiet. Go into the sacred space of your inner self. You have to close the physical eye so your third spiritual eye will open. I said you have to close your two physical eyes so your third spiritual eye will open. Now, the third eye can be open when the physical eyes are open, but the third eye opens up and can see much better when the physical eyes are closed. I said your third eye can only experience 20/20 vision when the physical eyes are closed. I said the third eye can only see when the physical eye can no longer see. Understand, overstand, and understand me. Understand, overstand, and understand me. Understand, overstand, when your two physical eyes are open. When your two physical eyes are open, you are living in a world of illusion and distraction. See, how am I going to connect to my inner self if I'm looking at big, fat, juicy asses walking by? Black woman, how you going to connect to your inner self and you looking at broad shoulders and, handsome brothers walking by? You can't. You are constantly distracted by music and images and clothes and bodies and gossip and talk and socialization. You got to close your physical eye so your third eye can open. The third eye can't see perfectly until the physical eye is closed.